Hey there folks, in today's video I'm going to show you how to repair a hole in your drywall such as this one where it's too large to be simply puttied over. So first thing you're going to want to do with this job is find your studs on either side of the damaged portion of drywall. Now to do that you can use a stud finder like this one and you can just run it along until you find your stud, just like that, and then mark it. However, if you don't have one of these, that's no problem. You can just use your hand and knock, and you'll hear when it becomes solid, there's a 2x4 behind it. When it's hollow, there's nothing behind it. And then you mark accordingly. Mark your 4 corners on either side of your damaged portion, just like I've done here. Connect them, make a square. Then we're going to take our utility knife and we're going to cut this. We're going to try and keep this square intact so it's easy to trace onto your new piece of drywall. However, if you can't keep it intact, that's no problem. You can just measure the size of the square and transfer it. So we're going to go ahead, get started, and get cutting. Now you're probably wondering why I'm not cutting on this line here. Just wanted to clarify that. When I'm going in here, I'm actually hitting a screw, so I just moved it over, that's no problem. This is just kind of a guideline. Alright, we're just going to wiggle this free. Again, trying to keep it intact. So now you'll see we have some 2x4s exposed. So now we can have something to screw into. So we're just going to go take this board. We're going to trace this onto a new sheet of drywall. When you do trace it, or if you decide to measure it, just make the new square about 1/8 of an inch smaller, because you saw how hard that was to pull that out. So if you make it 1/8 of an inch smaller on the top and one of the sides, it'll be nice and easy to slide right in. So we'll be back shortly with our new piece. Alright folks, so we're back now with our new piece. We're just going to test fit it, and it looks like it fits quite nicely. Again, it doesn't matter if it's perfectly lining up over here. That's just fine because that's all going to be filled in. So before we do that, what I want to do is trim down these edges. If you feel them, they might have a raised edge on them. So what I like to do is just take my knife and just trim that edge down like that. Because if you have a raised edge, when you go to put your putty on, it's not going to look good. We can just throw that in behind there. Alright, so then just make sure, feel it, make sure it's all smooth, no raised edge. We're all good with that. So we're just going to grab our screws and then we'll attach it to the wall. Alright, so now we have our drill, we have our drywall screws. We're just going to line it back up again. And then we're going to screw it into place. And I just gotta put screws on the 4 corners. Alright, so our next task is going to be to apply tape and putty around this edge. And as I'm feeling this edge, just go run your hands along, make sure it's level and flush with the wall. You might not be able to see it on camera, but there's a little bit of a raised edge on our new piece right here, so we're just going to go ahead and trim that down. This will ensure that our final product is looking good. So we're just going to grab our putty and we'll be right back. Alright, so this is the putty that I use here. It's called Dust Away. It's not totally dust free. It makes a lot less dust. It kind of clumps up. If you have a finished home and you're just doing patchwork like this, you can get this. It's a few dollars more per pail, but then that way you're not going to be ruining the rest of your house with drywall dust. So we're going to use our putty knife. This one has a little bit left over on it, dried up, but that doesn't matter. We're going to go and put some putty nice and thick all around all the edges. Alright, so now that we have it thickly laid on, it's not perfect because we're going to be using this paper tape right here. I prefer this over the fiberglass stuff, the mesh. I've used it before, it's not that great. So we're gonna go over an edge. We're just gonna roughly measure. And then we're just gonna cut a piece, set the first piece into our mud. This is why it doesn't have to be perfect just yet, because then you're going to take your putty knife, just hold one end here, and you're going to embed it into your putty. Then you're going to take another piece, same thing, line it up, and cut it. Alright, so now all we have to do is wait for this to dry. Then we're going to sand it, and if we need to, we'll put another coating of mud onto it and then sand it and paint it. So we'll see you back when it dries for the next step. Alright, so now that this is all dry, we're just going to give it a quick sand. I like using this little sponge. It's nice and flat. You can get ones that are a rectangle. I like the ones like this if you're going into edges. We're not going into edges, but they're a great all-around sponge. Just get them from your hardware store. And as always, we're going to put on our dust mask. And we're just going to start sanding gently until it's nice and even. Alright folks, so that's nice and smooth. There are a couple low spots. So this one's okay here along the seam, but this one has a low spot. We're just going to touch those up real quick with our putty. So we're just going to grab a very small amount. And then you just run your hand along and just double check if there's any low spots you feel need a little putty. Just fill them in. Alright, so This will dry a lot quicker just because it's a very thin coat. The last one was thick, so it took all night. This one should be done before the night's out. Then we'll give it one more quick sand and a quick coating of paint. So we'll see you again when it dries. Alright folks, so now this is nice and dry again because it was a thin coat, so we're just going to lightly sand it. Alright, so now that we've tested it, seems to be all smooth. We're just going to take a clean cloth and dry off any of the, or rather wipe off any of the excess dust, so that when we paint it, it's not going to clump up inside the paint. And then you just grab your paint. If you have any left over, this is just white paint, so it's easy to match. Had some left over and we just paint over top. Alright folks, so that looks pretty good. This is just the stairs to our basement, so I'm not looking for absolutely perfect. However, if you are, you can add another coat of paint to your liking, but that's all there really is to it. So, as always, hopefully you found this helpful, and please like and subscribe.